One of the things we talked about is this evolution, and I feel that this is so important because the needs of the individual 30, 40 years ago has changed significantly, so much that the advice that we received 30, 20 years ago is probably not the same. And to give you an example, my father, I'll use an example, moved to Washington State in 1973 after meeting my mother at Grambling University. And when he started working at Boeing, like many people who are from the Seattle area, Boeing, just like every other big firm, took care of their employees. And if you think about it, Boeing offered a salary, a bonus, a benefits package that include health, their dental, vision. But what I think is also important is they also offered this promise. Promise of what? What did they offer? Yeah, a pension, exactly. A pension is a promise to pay a dollar amount out in for the rest of their lives. And actually, it's not only for them, it's for their spouse, their beneficiary. So that model really just alleviated a lot of the decision making when it came to taking care of all these moving pieces. The company did it for them. Now, as you move forward, the companies, whether it was Coke, whether it was Ford, whether it was Boeing, when you're doing this promise, this obligation of all these moving parts for people, for 10 people, for 100 people, 1,000 people, it's feasible. When I interned at Boeing in 1997, Boeing had 250,000 people. And so when you talk about the obligation for some of these big companies, that's a big number. And so what you started to see, and started in the 80s, is this taking the obligation from the company and pushing it to the individual, right? And so now that led to the evolution of what? Exactly, the 401k, right? And that is a defined contribution. So defined pensions, those are company promises to pay money in retirement. Defined contribution, that's the employees. That's your own responsibility. So that shift has led to a lot of the obligation being pushed back into the employee. Now let me talk about the evolution of financial advice. If you think about financial advice, it came in the form of a stockbroker, right? They sold you something, and through that, you were given the advice of whether it was a stock, whether it was a bond, whether it was life insurance. And then in the 80s and 90s, you started to see a shift from stockbroker to financial advisor. And the thought process behind that is, not only do you need to collect a commission, or we move from collecting the commission over to now I'm getting a advice on my investable assets, right? And this obviously aligned with the movement from the pension to the defined contribution. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because the advice moved from the vehicle now to investable assets, right? And then what I started to look at myself, and I'll talk about a little bit of the difference between a financial advisor and a financial planner, is that even though the advice was on the investments, the idea was to provide advice around all the other moving parts, right? But what I saw is an opportunity to move that needle even further, and you saw this in the 2000s and now it's 2018, is that financial planning is a bigger assessment of your life. That includes things like understanding your goals and understands your budget, understanding your net worth, your risk, which a lot of people equate to insurance. We'll get into that later. Investments, it does include investments, just not individuals, but just overall investments across a variety of marketable securities and stuff like houses and things of that nature. It takes into consideration taxes. It takes into consideration inflation. It takes into consideration your retirement, your education goals. And then finally, it also takes those things in consideration of all of the moving parts that go into our legal and regulatory environment. So I think it's a bigger picture. The key here is the evolution is, as an individual, the advice has moved to try to catch up, but now we're trying to match the advice to beyond what's on paper, and that's what this setting is the understanding of you as an individual, but also the individual in relationship to this new partnership, and that's your marriage. Look around. Where do you get that information? It's not there. In fact, if you go to any of the major investment firms, you won't find the conversation based on a partnership. It's based on the individual. Understand where it came from. It just hasn't evolved. That's why this marriage and money is so important. You're making decisions as a partnership, but not neglecting the individual. And there's some moving parts that's embedded in that. So we want to address that evolution of you along with the way that we deliver our advice.